So in terms of chaos and all of the things that come together, it sounds extremely wise to talk about unity of effort and unity of command depend upon communications. But can you add to your opening conversation, what are good communication approaches, especially considering that our audience is a combination of business, technology, and security executives? You know, I remember back in the day we used to use pager duty, and everybody would get a text message on their pager and they'd know how to respond properly when they saw that. But considering modern times and the amount of dependency that exists for cloud services or IT services, can you highlight a few good communication approaches?
Yeah, there's certainly the auto dialers, right, that we used and we'd set up, and they would notify the crisis teams, get people coordinated. We had pre-scheduled bridges, you know, back in the teleconference days that were dedicated, that rotated every once in a while. We had hotlines. So you have to create that, in essence, communication infrastructure, right? But I'll tell you, even in today's world, and even I did this at Intel, you know, several years ago before I left, we still kept old school fax machines. We still kept landlines. We had satellite phones in all the locations. Why? Because the security person in me, the business continuity person in me, wants to have backup mechanisms for coordination and communication. Right? You have to assume, in some cases, depending upon the incident, that the primary mechanism you're going to rely on won't be there. You have to plan for that risk, and then you have to have alternatives. And trust me, having, you know, turned on in one case, again, while I was back at Intel, the PA systems in buildings. Well, guess what? When we turned them on to do, you know, with thousands of people on a site, we had a few sites because those PA systems hadn't been turned on in a while. They didn't work, right? So again, you have to test the fax machine. You have to test the PA system. You have to, you know, do it so that you have the muscle memory of that unity of effort and unity of command, and the various ways you can get it out. And it could be Slack. It could be, you know, Teams. It could be instant messaging. It could be mass blast of text to people. But again, if you do a mass blast of text to people in this day and age, they're going to think it's a phishing attempt and they're under attack, right? So, and I've experienced that when I've done mass things in email, all of a sudden the help desk calls go up because everybody got thousands of people who think they're being phished, right? And so you have to think about that reaction. You have to think about the emotion that's going to start happening. And to your point, what are the do's and don'ts for employees? Who's the spokespeople, right? Who leads, who follows in that? I had an employee once in a factory in Ireland. It's public information. They could go find it if somebody searched. So I'm not sharing anything I shouldn't. But when that bad DAT happened and I had 26,000 systems bricked, literally in seconds, a quarter of the workforce, 50% of the office workers, guess what? A factory employee in Ireland, because they couldn't get online and stuff like that, and because it created some other issues, what did they do? They tweeted something. What did that do? Stock, factory employee, you know, high-end factory, high-end product, high-end margin. We're in an incident, this is going on, systems, I can't access this, can't access that. Market picks it up in a second. All of a sudden, stock price starts dipping. Okay, right? So we had to think about all those angles. Well, okay, did we have the investor relations folks? Were they teed up? What about the PR team? Who's going to deal with that employee? I mean, so literally we tried to instrument even the listening for other things that are inside the environment and outside the environment, because that will add chaos and it'll create an expansion of the event, right? And when you look at that event later, you go, okay, 26,000 systems, Malcolm, that's a material event. Actually, it wasn't. We didn't miss a beat on shipping product, we didn't miss a beat on designing product, we didn't miss a beat on finance, we didn't miss a beat on anything. It cost me $50,000 in contractors, a bunch of people at CDs bringing systems up in cafeterias. No material event. Why? Because we instrumented our action, the crisis, the communication, the coordination. The only thing that could have been material, but it was a little tiny blip, but we caught it early, was that tweet and what it was starting to do with the stock price, but because we had investor relations, we had the PR team, they corralled it out in the market. We got to the factory manager, and I talked to that employee personally. And then guess what? We used that as a story, and we explained it to 100,000 employees, what can happen when they do something that they didn't think was important. Now, you know, that person got, I'd say, a strong warning. We didn't terminate them, we didn't performance manage them, but I used them as an example so that the rest of the company could get the learnings on do's and don'ts, right? And telling that story, so they basically do the mea culpa and say, hey, I didn't realize this, I wasn't thinking that, and here's the damage it could have done to the company and the other turmoil that could have been created. So if you're ever in that situation, be careful what you post, what you share, what you talk, because it has implications on the company, even though you might not have thought that, right? And now guess what? Everybody has a real story with a real incident with a real person who triggered that, sharing their lesson learned. Again, taking that learning and bringing it back to communication, and again, just over and over again, the more you can do that, the broader you can instrument the reach, the coordination, the people, and again, know who's in charge. Because if you don't have one person in charge, you're going to have chaos, and it just needs to flow like a command and control structure. And I know you know that from your military days, Keon, right? And the lieutenants and stuff like that, and everybody else stays off of the battlefield until they're called, or if they think they need to get onto the battlefield, they go to the right person and they either get, you know, put in, or they get told to stay to the side still.